Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Audra's terrible secret is in jeopardy, while Victor plots a GC departure. As Victor Newman plans an escape from Genoa City, Audra Charles' terrible secret will be put in danger. Before Sally Spectre acknowledges they'll most likely be at the Abbott Communications launch party, Audra will erupt into a diatribe about Claire Newman and Kyle Abbott at society. Sally will, however, advise Audra to stay out of the argument and socialize with the other partygoers. Sally will still harbor some unresolved concerns regarding Audra by the time she arrives at Billy Abbott's house. Sally and Billy will hope for the best, but there's always a risk Audra will cause trouble. According to Y&R previews, Sally will be enamored with the jewelry Billy lends her when he eventually pulls out a present for her. Billy will confess that he asked Chloe Mitchell for permission to let Sally wear the bling tonight because it was once owned by Katherine Chancellor before she gave it to Delia Abbott. Holden Novak will confront Audra back at society. Holden will plot to destroy Audra by disclosing what transpired in Los Angeles if she doesn't leave Claire and Kyle alone. Holden will claim that he cleaned up her mess, but Audra will essentially call his bluff because he had a significant role in what transpired. Even if Audra tries to be calm, she will appear somewhat alarmed by Holden's threat of exposure. Claire will notify Victor at Newman Enterprises on Kyle's refusal to reveal kiss details and subsequent proposal following their altercation. Victor's defense of Kyle's affection for Claire will surprise her. Victor will continue to support Kyle and Claire's relationship because Kyle passed his test and didn't want to hurt Claire by telling her about his gotcha kiss with Audra. Claire will discover that Kyle never provided her with the specifics of the proposition that resulted in a deal when Victor reveals anything about his arrangement with Kyle. Victor won't divulge any information to Claire either, so he will only advise her to speak with Kyle and follow her intuition. After the way he treated Claire, Kyle will run across Victoria Newman at Crimson Lights, who won't be happy with him. After admitting his mistake, Kyle will ask Victoria for assistance and consider how he might make amends. Victoria won't try to change her daughter's mind, but she will advise her to speak with Claire and find out if she needs more space, improved communication, or anything else. After all the proposed drama, Kyle will join Claire on the terrace and apologize for being so demanding. Claire will surprise Kyle by bringing up his agreement with Victor since she will have a new problem to address. Claire will be furious with this another secret and another proof that Kyle betrayed their confidence. Claire will put Kyle on the position by inquiring about the terms of that contract and whether he was defending himself or her. Victoria will be surprised by Victor's ongoing readiness to let Claire make her own decisions when she visits his office. Regarding Audra, Victor would believe that since no one wants her in town anymore, it's time to show her the door. Holden and Audra face off. Holden and Audra are having another heated argument. Sally and Audra will most likely talk about the final specifics of the Abbott Communications launch at society. However, they will surely wind up discussing their private lives. Audra might vent to Sally about Holden suddenly siding with Claire if this is prior to her confrontation with Holden. Sally, meantime, is dealing with her own turmoil. Teasers suggest that Sally doubts Billy's judgment. Will Sally vent about her partner? More teasers hint at a showdown between Holden, who no longer seems to care about his ex, and Audra. They are said to be exchanging threats. And since neither of them will discuss the specifics of their relationship in Los Angeles, it's possible that one of the threats stems from their common history. Is the situation in Los Angeles so dire that they can utilize it as leverage? And will their tenuous relationship end if these threats are released? After all, Holden now seems to be much more interested in Claire. In addition to worrying for Claire and grieving for Cole, Victoria is also dealing with the Kane predicament. To make sure Kane doesn't get his hands on Chancellor or Newman, the family has united. Who or what is focusing her on Monday, then? Perhaps we should have another meeting with Nate. Lately, those two have been helping one another. As the chaos in Genoa City intensifies, the spotlight shifts toward two powerful storm fronts colliding, Audra Charles' terrible secret creeping closer to exposure and Victor Newman quietly plotting what could be his final escape from the city he has ruled for decades. And while one storyline involves a woman whose past mistakes in Los Angeles could annihilate every ounce of credibility she's built since arriving in town, the other revolves around a man who, despite his relentless control and dominance, has finally decided that an exit strategy might be necessary to protect both his empire and the family legacy, though his choice will ripple through Newman Enterprises and beyond, touching lives in ways no one anticipates. And as these two arcs intertwine, Genoa City's fragile peace teeters on the edge of implosion. It begins when Sally Spectra, brimming with equal parts anxiety and cautious hope, prepares herself for the Abbott Communications launch party, but before she can even fully absorb what the night might bring, Audra unleashes a diatribe at society, venting bitter frustration about Claire Newman and Kyle Abbott, lashing out not only because she despises Claire but also because she senses the ground beneath her is about to give way, though Sally, in her usual pragmatic but emotionally charged manner, urges Audra to quit the theatrics and mingle with partygoers instead of fueling public spectacle, advice Audra clearly doesn't want to hear. Still, Sally's words linger, nagging at Audra's pride, and by the time Sally arrives at Billy Abbott's house to regroup, her mind is still clouded with unresolved suspicions about Audra's motives, and those suspicions intertwine with her own insecurities about Billy's loyalty, though she attempts to bury them beneath the glamour of the evening, especially once Billy reveals a gift that makes her heart flutter, jewelry with a Chancellor legacy, once worn by Delia Abbott's grandmother, Katherine Chancellor, and lent only after Billy sought Chloe Mitchell's permission, a gesture that leaves Sally simultaneously touched and overwhelmed by the symbolism of trust, history, and second chances. Yet while Sally revels in the sparkling necklace and Billy's romantic gesture, elsewhere at society a far darker storm brews when Holden Novak corners Audra with icy determination, warning her that if she doesn't leave Claire and Kyle alone, he will expose what really happened in Los Angeles, the scandal she has been burying ever since she set foot in Genoa City, though Audra attempts to bluff her way through, reminding him that he too played a role in the sordid mess and would go down with her if the truth emerged. But despite her cool facade, the crack in her armor is clear. Holden's threat rattles her to the core, forcing her to replay every decision she made in LA, every cover-up, every manipulation, and question how long before it all comes crashing down. Meanwhile, Claire Newman heads into Newman Enterprises to confide in Victor that Kyle Abbott has refused to reveal the full truth about the kiss with Audra and instead shocked her with a sudden proposal, and while she expects her grandfather to rail against Kyle or at least warn her about his divided loyalties, Victor instead surprises Claire by defending Kyle, insisting that Kyle passed his test. Because he resisted using the kiss to manipulate her further and instead showed restraint, though Victor carefully withholds the more damning detail, that Kyle struck a deal with him in exchange for passing this so-called test, and when Claire presses Victor for details, his refusal to provide clarity only fuels her frustration, leaving her to wonder whether her instincts about Kyle's duplicity are accurate or if she's letting insecurity blind her to the man's true intentions. Later, Kyle stumbles into Victoria Newman at Crimson Lights, where the sharp sting of maternal disapproval meets him head-on, and Victoria makes it clear she's unimpressed with the way he has treated her daughter. But Kyle, in rare humility, admits his mistakes and even asks for advice on repairing the damage, though Victoria wisely avoids dictating Claire's feelings, instead urging Kyle to open honest communication and be willing to accept whatever her daughter decides, whether it means space, forgiveness, or ending the relationship altogether. And while Kyle absorbs this advice, the weight of his duplicity gnaws at him until he finds Claire on the terrace, where he offers an apology for his demanding behavior. But instead of immediate reconciliation, Claire blindsides him with the revelation that she knows about his secret arrangement with Victor, demanding to know what terms he agreed to and whether his choices were about protecting himself or safeguarding her. And the confrontation leaves Kyle cornered, unable to dodge the truth much longer, forcing him to realize he may lose the very woman he claims to love because of his inability to stay transparent. Elsewhere, Victoria confronts Victor directly, expressing astonishment at his willingness to let Claire navigate her own choices without pulling the strings entirely, a rare show of restraint from a man known for controlling every detail. But Victor, perhaps worn by age, legacy, or the looming escape he contemplates, insists that sometimes letting the next generation make their own mistakes is the ultimate form of protection, though privately he confesses that his patience with Audra Charles has run dry, noting pointedly that since no one in Genoa City wants her around anymore, it's time to show her the door. A statement that rings more like a decree than a suggestion. Back at society, Holden and Audra's clash escalates into a verbal battlefield where veiled threats about their shared history in Los Angeles swirl like smoke, and though neither will reveal specifics aloud, The implication is devastating. Whatever happened in that city was dark enough to destroy them both, a weapon sharp enough to sever any fragile alliance they might salvage. And while Audra tries to posture as the one in control, Holden's dismissive attitude toward her rattles her confidence further, especially as it becomes clear his focus now lies entirely on protecting Claire rather than shielding his ex. The tension between them is palpable, but Audra's greatest fear isn't Holden's betrayal. It's the possibility that the secret she thought was buried in LA might resurface through other channels, and her paranoia grows when she later crosses paths with Sally again, this time under the guise of finalizing details for the Abbott Communications launch, but instead of focusing on logistics, the two women drift into a personal conversation where Audra vents about Holden's betrayal and his sudden allegiance with Claire, while Sally, already unsettled by her own uncertainties about Billy, listens with one ear while silently debating whether Audra's volatility could sabotage the evening. More teasers suggest Sally may even question Billy's judgment as she prepares to stand by his side at the launch, sensing trouble on the horizon, while Holden and Audra continue their cycle of veiled blackmail, mutual distrust, and unresolved tension over Los Angeles, each threatening the other but neither willing to expose the full truth for fear of self-destruction. And the longer their stalemate drags on, the clearer it becomes that their dirty history is a ticking time bomb, one that could explode at any moment with devastating consequences. Meanwhile, Victoria, still grieving Cole and preoccupied with Kane's schemes to seize Chancellor and Newman assets, finds herself stretched to her limits emotionally, but she draws strength from unlikely alliances, leaning on Nate for advice and support in ways that hint at a growing connection, though whether professional or personal remains uncertain. And through all of this, Victor continues to tighten his web of control while simultaneously preparing to vanish, leaving questions about who will inherit his throne, whether Kyle and Claire's fractured bond can survive another lie, and how long Audra can keep Holden from using their Los Angeles nightmare against her, because in Genoa City, no secret stays buried forever, and every choice comes with a price that eventually must be paid, even by those who believe themselves untouchable. As Genoa City braces for the Abbott Communications launch party, every key player finds themselves caught in the rippling crosscurrents of schemes, secrets, and betrayals, and though the glittering event is meant to be a celebration of ambition and legacy, beneath the polished surface lies a powder keg waiting for the right spark to ignite. With Audra Charles once again positioned at the epicenter of disaster, she has convinced herself that her Los Angeles skeletons can stay locked in the closet. Yet Holden Novak's threat continues to echo in her mind, making her realize that the walls are closing in faster than she anticipated. And no matter how she tries to maintain her poise, those who know her best can see the cracks beginning to form. But what Audra doesn't anticipate is how Victor Newman's own plotting intersects with her predicament, because as Victor quietly weighs his exit from Genoa City, his calculated moves include neutralizing all threats that might destabilize Newman Enterprises. And in his eyes, Audra Charles represents chaos personified, a liability that must be contained or eliminated before he departs. Meanwhile, Sally Spectra, still wearing the Chancellor heirloom Billy entrusted her with, struggles to silence the voice inside warning her that no gesture, no matter how sentimental, can erase her doubts about whether Billy's judgment will hold strong under pressure, because the Abbott name comes with its own heavy baggage, and as the launch party approaches, she wonders if aligning herself with Billy, and by extension Abbott Communications, will entangle her in rivalries she has no ability to control, especially when Audra is involved, since Sally has already witnessed how the woman's venomous energy infects every room she enters, turning celebration into conflict in the blink of an eye. Back at Society, Holden's simmering fury intensifies as he recalls how much he sacrificed to cover Audra's tracks in Los Angeles, cleaning up her mess when their business ventures spiraled into dangerous territory. And while Audra attempts to minimize his role and dismiss his threats as hollow, Holden knows he holds enough information to bring her world crumbling down. But what he doesn't fully grasp is that Victor, too, is piecing together fragments of her LA past, having quietly dispatched contacts to unearth the truth. Because Victor's golden rule has always been control through information, and Audra's history is the kind of weapon he could wield with devastating precision if the need arises. For now, Claire Newman remains unaware of the finer details, though her intuition has already picked up on Audra's hostility and Kyle's evasions, and her unease only deepens when she confronts Kyle again, this time pressing him harder about the mysterious arrangement he made with her grandfather. And while Kyle stalls, grasping at explanations that skirt the real issue, Claire's anger hardens into resolve. She refuses to be another Newman pawn or another Abbott casualty, and the thought of her trust being manipulated again makes her reconsider whether aligning herself with Kyle is worth the inevitable heartbreak. But complicating matters further is Victoria's divided focus, as she tries to balance her grief over Cole, her ongoing battle with Kane over control of Chancellor and Newman assets, and her instinctive desire to shield Claire from repeating her own mistakes in love. Yet Victoria is forced to admit, even if only to herself, that Victor's newfound willingness to let Claire steer her own course is both liberating and terrifying, because without his iron grip, the path ahead feels uncertain, and uncertainty is something the Newmans rarely tolerate. Against this backdrop of family turmoil, Audra finds herself spiraling when whispers begin to circulate that Holden has been seen in private conversations with Claire, raising suspicion that he is not only threatening Audra but actively helping Claire fortify her position against rivals. And this sends Audra into a tailspin, because if Holden truly shifts allegiance, she loses the one person who could keep their Los Angeles misdeeds buried. And though she publicly pretends not to care, in private she rages, pacing her suite, replaying every memory of LA and how one careless leak could not only end her career but potentially draw law enforcement back into her orbit. Still, she refuses to let fear paralyze her, and instead she doubles down on her campaign of intimidation, vowing to remind Holden, and anyone else, that Audra Charles is not a woman to be underestimated, though her bravado doesn't erase the fact that Victor has already made up his mind about her, seeing her as a destabilizing force that must be removed before his departure plans solidify. Victor's strategy becomes clearer when he calls a discreet meeting at Newman Enterprises, subtly instructing his inner circle to prepare contingency plans in case certain individuals no longer remain part of their ecosystem, his phrasing vague yet deliberate. And while Victoria interprets this as yet another maneuver against Kane, those who know Victor best sense that he has Audra squarely in his crosshairs, setting the stage for her to be forced out not just socially but professionally, leaving her isolated and vulnerable, and perhaps finally exposed. Meanwhile, Kyle continues his downward spiral, bouncing between apologies and justifications in his efforts to win back Claire's trust. But his every word digs the hole deeper, especially when Claire confronts him about whether the terms of his arrangement with Victor involved her directly, her voice shaking with both fury and heartbreak as she demands to know if he ever truly acted in her best interest. And though Kyle insists that he was trying to shield her from unnecessary pain, the damage is already done. Claire feels betrayed. Another man who claimed to love her but ultimately chose secrecy over honesty, and in her eyes, the kiss with Audra now symbolizes not just a fleeting mistake but a symptom of deeper flaws in Kyle's character. Sally, on the other hand, arrives at the launch party determined to project confidence, yet as she mingles among the glittering crowd, her eyes inevitably drift toward Audra, who has also arrived despite every sign that she should have stayed away. And while Sally tries to focus on Billy, enjoying the way the Chancellor necklace sparkles under the lights, her instincts scream that Audra's presence spells trouble. A suspicion validated when Holden steps into the venue, his gaze locking on Audra with a mixture of contempt and amusement, as though daring her to slip, and the tension between them is palpable enough to draw curious stares, though no one yet knows the true stakes of their silent standoff. Throughout the night, Victor moves like a ghost, observing from the shadows, less concerned with the pomp of the event and more focused on watching his chess pieces in motion. Studying how Audra interacts, how Kyle falters, how Claire stiffens when addressed, and how Sally, though seemingly detached from the family feuds, positions herself in ways that could alter alliances, because for Victor, every party is a battlefield, every smile a mask, and every secret a potential weapon. And as the evening progresses, his mind drifts again to the possibility of departure, imagining what it would mean to walk away from the empire he built, leaving others to fight the wars he no longer has the patience to wage. But before Victor can finalize his exit, Audra's tightening web of lies threatens to combust in spectacular fashion, especially as Holden edges closer to revealing their Los Angeles nightmare, and the question looming over everyone is no longer whether Audra's secret will come out, but when, and who will be the one to detonate the truth that could destroy her carefully constructed world forever.